Righty, hello everyone. I thought I'd go through another little tutorial today for you guys of the swirly looking Photoshop effect that everyone was asking for. So the first thing you'll need to do is pick a picture which you think will work. Something like this with quite a plain background doesn't work so well. Whereas something like this with a bit more contrast, different colors and things works a little bit better. So let's use this image here. First thing we have to do is take it over into Photoshop. So just by hitting Control E, it's going to go and pop over into Photoshop. There it goes. Right, so the nice thing about this technique is I can teach you how to do it, but I can also teach you a way where you never have to remember how to do it again, which is a little added bonus, and that is with these actions in Photoshop. So an action essentially is you're making a little set of instructions where you can go back and push play in future and Photoshop will just do that same set of actions again. So it's a really handy technique. So the first thing I'm going to do before I start with this image is basically start making a new action. The way you find your actions on this little drop down panel here, it's this little tick button. So if you can find the tick, little arrow or play looking button. So if you can find that and tick it, this is the action box. It's also found in Window and then down to Actions. So if you go Window, Actions, there it is. So two ways of finding it. The first thing you'd want to do is click on this little plus button here. So I'm going to go and click on that. Oops. So a little plus button there. And I'm going to call it Twirl or something similar. I'm going to call it Test because I've already made one, so I don't actually need to do it again. And then what you want to do is hit record. So now any steps that we do to this image before we hit stop are going to be recorded into the action, and then they're going to be done to future images when you push the little play. So, right, let's get started. So the first thing I want to do for this image is just make it a little bit smaller. As you can see, here's full resolution. It's quite big. So the bigger the picture for this technique, the more your computer is going to struggle. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit Control or Command Alt I. It's going to bring me up to my image sizing panel, and I'm just going to make it 2500 pixels on the longest side and hit enter. You see how it's now a much smaller image. So if you hit Control 0 or Command 0 on a Mac, it fills the screen. So this image now fits in this little screen nicely. So you can see it as big as possible without chopping parts off. So I like to work in that little mode there. Right, so once I've done that, the first thing I want to do is make a new layer of this image. And the reason why I make a new layer is because we want this effect not to be on this layer so that we can blend it in and have options to edit later. So I'm going to hit Control or Command J. It's going to make a new layer. So you see I've got two of those layers now. And then the first part of this effect, we must go to Filter, down to Pixelate, and then we want to go to Mezzotint. Now, there's a few options in Mezzotint, and the one that you want to select is this medium lines, and then just hit OK. Now, the reason we want to do this is these funny looking lines are actually going to give you that the data required to get the swirl look. So it looks horrendous now, but trust me, it works. So then we want to go up to Filter, and then down to Blur, and then we want to go to Radial Blur. Now, Radial Blur is normally in a spin orientation, but we actually want to go to Zoom. We want to go to quality, either good or best. The higher the quality, the longer it's going to take your computer to work. So just bear that in mind. So I'm going to go to best, and I'm going to go amount all the way up to 100. Now, the reason I resized the image in the beginning was to make this part of the process a little bit faster. So if you've got all the time to work with the image, you can leave your image full size, but I don't need it full size for this. So. Right, and then we just hit OK. And there we have, you see these lines starting to appear here. So this is going to be the start of this effect. Now what we want to do is we want to replicate, make these lines a little bit stronger. So I'm going to hit Control Alt F or Command Alt F on a Mac, and I'm going to hit that 3 more times which is basically just making that blur happen 3 more times. So if you go down to filter, the very top option is the last thing that you did. So you can also click filter and then radial blur again, and it's going to keep repeating that process. So you see there, by clicking it 3 or 4 times, we've made these lines nicer, more defined, which is good. Right. So the next step is I want to duplicate this layer now. So I'm going to hit again Control J, but I'm going to turn off this top layer. So by clicking this little I button, I've now hidden that top layer. I want to click on layer 1 so that I'm working on this layer now. And then I'm going to go to Filter, down to Distort, and then Twirl. Now I'm going to make this angle 100 and then hit OK. And you see the effect is starting to happen here. So now I want to click on this top layer again, layer 1. I want to turn it back on by turning on the eye. And then I want to do the same thing, but with a different value. So filter, distort, twirl. And now I need it to go the other way. So I'm going to go minus 100. Now these values you can play with a little bit. You can change them up, test them on the image, see which one works best for you. But I find 100 works pretty well. Now you'll notice that we can only see this top swirl and not this bottom swirl. So what we want to do is we want to change this top layer here from normal down to either lighten or screen. So for this example with these colors, screen is looking a little bit nicer, but for a lot of images, lighten looks nicer. So you must just play with this one and make your own mind up. So as you can see, screen here is showing a little bit more, but lighten's almost showing them in a nicer, smoother way. So I'm going to click on lighten. And now what I want to do is I want to take these 2 layers. So I've got to click the top one, click the second one by holding Shift. Now they're both active. And I want to hit Command or Control on a Mac and then G. This is going to put them into a group. So now I can double click on that and I can call this swirl and hit Enter. So now by turning off this eye effect, this is where our swirl is. Now this is the part on our action where we want to hit stop. So if I go up to stop there, it's now made the action. So if we go all the way up the top there, there's my swirl test which I've just made, and I'll show you that in another image right now. So to prove that it works, let's take another image from here. Let's see what happens to Mr. Frog. Let's do the bee. So again, Control E, send it to Photoshop. Here it is. So now all you need to do this effect again without going through all those steps is click on the swirl action you just made and then hit play. Now you'll see it'll take a little bit of time, but things are starting to happen without me doing anything now. And depending on your computer is how long this will take. But there you go. Without having to do any of the steps again, there's our nice swirl. And then because we went through all those steps nice and methodically, here's all the work is still in here. So we can still go back into this layer and test between screen and lighten. And then we've still got it in the group that we can edit, but there's all the work done for you just by clicking a button. So these actions are really, really nice for future playing around. So I'm just going to close that image. Right, so back to this picture. The reason I put the actual swirl effect here in a group is because now I can edit it. So if you're doing this with the landscape or something similar, by pushing this little button down here, which is a layer mask button, I can hide certain parts of this image within the picture or blend it in between the layers. So within this little mask here, if you paint black, so with a B for brush, and then with this little color swatch with black in the foreground, to get to the default colors, black and white, you hit the D button. So D goes to white and then black, and then you hit X and it swaps them around. So with black in the front, you can see now I can paint away some of that effect. So this is how you could blend it into your sky, for example, if you're doing a little bit of a landscape shot. You could blend a nice swirl just into the sky, for example, if that's something you are interested in. So I hope that helped, and I hope that you enjoyed that little tutorial. And then, yeah, if there's any other ones that I've mentioned along the way which I've forgotten, just let me know and we'll go through them. Cool.